Pacers win in Philadelphia. They beat the 76ers 112-100. Tony East here covering the team for Forbes and Locked On Pacers. That is not a game anyone would describe as pretty, but I think many people will describe that game incorrectly. Pacers win by 12. They were down 16 in the middle of the second quarter of this game. It wasn't pretty to start, certainly. Jeff Doughton was hot. The Pacers were not, even though it was frisky and close at times throughout the first half. Suddenly, a runaway train came via the 76ers, and they looked great. They were putting the Pacers away, and this game looked like it could slip away quickly for the Pacers. They recovered nicely, though. But here's why I think this game will be described so poorly. Sixers' biggest lead comes at 43-27. Ironically, Miles Turner's the guy that answers. He was huge in the first half. Here's why this game will be described poorly. Yes, the Pacers needed to drive to the basket more in the first half. Yes, their defense on Doughton was actually better than the box score suggests, but it was imperfect. Yes, they needed to play better. Jenny Busick, their assistant coach, said as much on her halftime interview. I watched it on WTHR, but the FanDuel Sports Indiana broadcast, saying that yes, this Pacers team sometimes has trouble getting going in the games like this against inferior competition or things of the sorts, right? All sorts of reasons you could point to. However, none of that was the reason they were behind to me. The Sixers started 9 for 13 from the field. The Pacers were 5 for 18 at the time. The Sixers were 4 for 7 from deep at the time. The Pacers were 2 for 9, right? It was a 12-0 run from Philly early. 4 of the Sixers' first 6 makes were just ridiculously tough contested shots. A couple from Doughton. I think Ricky Council hit one. And Yabusele hit a tough post shot. I thought, okay, whatever. They're up 16-10. But this will stabilize. But that just kept happening. Jeff Doughton starts 5 for 5. All tough. The Pacers were 10 for 30 to start this game and 3 for 13 from deep, while the Sixers were significantly better. At the time of that moment, when the Pacers were 10 for 30 from the field, they were 20% behind an effective field goal percentage. It was 58.3 for Philly and 38.3 for the Pacers. They'd only given up 36 points at the time. It was 17 minutes into the game. That's pretty good. That's good enough defense. They were still losing by a lot. They were 11 for 36 at one point. Miles Turner came in, kicked some butt. Pacers got it to within 4 at halftime and were way better than the Sixers in the second half. Significantly better, right? They win the second half by 16 points, as they should have. They were the better team on paper and in practice. That's why they won the game. But you look at this game and everyone's going to say, oh, they weren't ready to go. They didn't have quite the effort. Their defense was there, yada, yada, yada. And some of those things are not wrong, right? I'm not here to say that everyone's an idiot for saying those things. But what I am here to say is I think this was just a make or miss game. The Pacers backcourt players, right? Wings or lower. Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, TJ McConnell, Ben Shepherd. Those players at halftime were a combined 5 for 24. That's barely over 20% from the field at the time. It was just a shot-making game. The third quarter starts. The Pacers made some shots. Shocker. They finally got the lid off the basket. Siakam dunked. Nesmith put back. Halliburton 3, and they were winning. And they never looked back. They were leading the rest of the way, right? They just needed to stabilize the scoring and shooting. I know that sounds so boring. And there's a lot of, if you didn't watch this game and you just saw the results, you just heard they were down 16 at one point, and you're just a results-based watcher, that's fine. That's what fandom is. But it felt so wrong to me that there was such a freak out about the first half of this game. The Pacers weren't playing, to the standard they needed to be. Pascal Siakam mentioned as much in his post-game interview with Jeremiah Johnson on the broadcast. But they weren't playing nearly as bad as the score suggested. At worst, on a normal day, that game ends up even. So they come out in the second half. Siakam leads by example. He was terrific in the second half of this game. He had a massive chase down block that led to a Pacers getting a stop, a rebound, and then he scored on the other end. Right? That was just an effort play, right? And guys foul by example when that kind of stuff happens, and I think there was certainly a boost in effort from the deficit at halftime, but that was big, and Turner and Siakam were both excellent. They had almost 1 point shy of having half the Pacers' points through 3 quarters. Some zone defense from the Pacers against 8 available Sixers, none of them who could shoot. Was a nice adjustment. Philly goes 11 for 38 from deep, which was actually a better percentage from deep than the Pacers. Their best shooter tonight was Oshae Brissett, ex-Pacer, who's not a good shooter, right? But besides that was Jared Butler. Not a good shooting team at all. That zone was big. The Pacers had a 10-0 run to start the fourth to put it away. Lots of stuff that they could have done the whole game. They're the better team on paper. They had the best player in this game in Siakam by a lot. They had the best front court in this game by a lot. Turner's 18 was the third leading scorer. Jeff Dowtin's 24 was second behind Siakam, right? They had the talent to win, but they couldn't put the ball in the basket with like good shots. I tweeted this at one point in the first half, and I have to scroll to find it, but play-by-play data can track just based on a shot's location. What this doesn't track is how contested it is or how open it is. But just based on a shot's location and distance and who the shooter is, play-by-play data can track what a team's expected effective field goal percentage is given the shots they take. And so at the point I tweeted this, I believe the Pacers were down about 10 or 11 in the second quarter. The Sixers' effective field goal percentage at that time expected was 52.7. The Pacers was 56.2. So the Pacers, given who was shooting and where from, were expected to be shooting 4% better based on the point value of the shot. Actual effective field goal percentage at that time, Philly was at 57.7, so slightly above what you'd expect. The Pacers were at 39.1. I've talked for 6 minutes about the same thing. The Pacers won by 12. They did not play to their standard of the first half. I will not say that. But they played, the score suggests they played awful, and they really just couldn't make anything. In the second half, they made a lot of shots. All the starters were really good. All the starting five plus 15 or better for the Pacers in this game. Nembhard's defense eventually picked up on Doughton. That was really important. He had 7 assists, no turnovers. Turner and Siakam were both great at finishing plays, and Turner at making threes. Aaron Nesmith really came alive in the second half. I don't think he missed in the second half. He made 3 threes, which led the starters, and 3 twos on his way to 16 points. That opening 5 was really good. The bench altogether was wobbly, but some good individuals, right? TJ McConnell didn't miss a shot in this game. Turnovers were killer for him, though, as a leader of that bench group. Obi Toppin was very good to me. 3 assists, 8 rebounds, 11 points. He always seems to play well against Philly and Nick Nurse teams with what he can provide in that way, right? Those guys were good. They helped save the bench from a dreadful night. Those groups, the Pacers tried to go with 5-man bench lineups in this game, and I get why. They have a back-to-back tomorrow in Milwaukee, their biggest game of the season, winning that Bucks game, right? They need to keep their starters' minutes down. And they couldn't because the bench wasn't good enough and they didn't make shots early. But I get why they went to the 5-man bench group. It didn't work. They had to turn back to the starters a few more times late. They got it done in the end. This game will be remembered as a win, but it might hurt that they shot so bad and couldn't rely on their bench tomorrow when they play Milwaukee. That game decides the tiebreaker between two teams currently tied in the standings for 4th, as big as it gets. It will go down as the biggest game of the Pacers, this regular season. I'll be in the building. We'll break it down right here on this channel. The Pacers beat the Sixers. They couldn't shoot in the first half. They shot great in the second half, and they win. 37th win of the season. They're very close to locking up a play-in at least spot. Much more on Locked On Pacers tomorrow. Thanks for watching. See ya in the next one.